Hey kids, today we're going to be talking about plants and the reason you haven't died from asphyxiation. Photosynthesis is a chemical process in order for plants to function by producing their own sugar. They do this by using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to make glucose and oxygen, the reason you have a functioning brain. Photosynthesis occurs in the leaf, more specifically in the palisade mesophyll cells, which contain most of the chloroplast. So when was photosynthesis discovered? Well, it all started with an experiment with a willow tree in the 1600s. This experiment was done for 5 years and was made by Jan Baptist von Helmont. After the 5 years, he measured the tree's weight and he concluded, oh, it's the water providing all the nutrients, not the soil. And while this is partly false, he's considered the first chemist to discover photosynthesis. Then there was Joseph Priestley, who conducted an experiment in 1774, in which he put a flame in a jar and a mouse in a jar. He learned that they both injured the air, but plants could restore it, which proved that there's oxygen in the air and plants give it off. And then, oh my god, there's another Jan Ingenhousz, who put submerged plants in water and put one in sunlight and another in shade in the late 1700s. The sunlit plant produced bubbles and the other didn't. Bada bing, bada boom, plants produce oxygen. Who knew bubbles were so important to history? In 1796, there's yet another John, except his name was Jean Senebar. He learned that plants absorb CO2 and release oxygen through the help of sunlight and chlorophyll. Well, that's the main gist of it. There were other scientists who helped contribute to the discovery of photosynthesis. But how does photosynthesis really work? So in photosynthesis, there are light-dependent reactions, which starts with light photons striking the photosystem tube in between the stroma and the thylakoid space, aka the thylakoid membrane. And yes, I said that correctly, the second photosystem. They named the first part of the reaction the second system because it's the second system they discovered. That's like saying, oh, I'm gonna name this tree the Viet Cong because I discovered the tree first, then I got jumped. No, you saw the tree first, then you got ambushed. So just rename the second photosystem to the first photosystem. Anyway, the light energizes the electrons inside the second photosystem, which travels through the proteins in the electron chains. Water is needed to split in order to produce hydrogen ions, oxygen, and replaces the missing electrons in the photosystem too. The oxygen is released through the stroma. When the energized electrons reach the hydrogen channel, all their energy is used to pump hydrogen ions from the stroma to the thylakoid space so they can pass, leaving the electrons without energy. With more hydrogen ions being in the thylakoid space, they are naturally diffused to the ATP synthase, which produces ATP from the rotations. When the electrons finally get to the photosystem 1, it's struck with sunlight to energize it to move to the second electron transport chain. They get reduced to NADP+ to NADP8. Next in photosynthesis is your light-independent reactions, called the Calvin cycle. Why is it called the Calvin cycle? Well, it was named after Melvin Calvin, who discovered how plants turn chemical energy into sugar. And may I say, what a terrible name. Imagine carrying a baby for the entire 9 months just to name your baby Melvin Calvin. I like to think his middle name was Alvin, so his name was Melvin Alvin Calvin. Basically what Calvin discovered is that when CO2 enters through the stroma, it gets added to a chain of 5 carbon, RUBP, on the rubisco. When the CO2 is added to the chain, it splits and forms 3-phosphate glyceride. The ATP energy in the NADPH come to reduce the molecules in the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, or G3P, which is used to form the glucose/sugar. Not all the G3P is used for sugar, and most of it is used to regenerate the rubisco. ADP energy is used in it to make them undergo carbon fixation and turn back into RUPP. So what did we learn, kids? Do scientists have bad names and labels for everything? Yes. Do I have Vietnam War flashbacks? Yes. But what we should have gained from this is that photosynthesis is a coexisting chemical reaction with animals and plants, so we both may function. Anyway, I'm Owen Plord, and thank you for watching.